Bitcoiners, I hope you're doing well. I'm loving my life. It's taken away all of my comments again. I don't know why it did it. New all-time high again today. Fiat is dying fast. Instead of good mornings, I shall play you some music. We love it. We love it. So good. Fiat going to zero. Call them poor. We call them poor. We love it. We love it. I had a friend text me at like 6 a.m. saying if this was the old CoinDesk offices, we used to play all these crazy meme songs. We played a lot of I Wouldn't Go to France, the old Trump song, and Billions and Billions. This would have been our absolute anthem today. So had to play it. It's too good. I hope it came through on the mic. Indeed, we're going to be talking about that today, right? But let's just acknowledge first, we have a major sunrise on our hands, right? The sun up, a little gray here where I am, but we're doing fine. We're loving life. Who could complain? And Bitcoin is running big time. So let's have a coffee and talk about what's new. Indeed, that was a lot of fun yesterday, and it's our theme for the day. But first, let me share some fake news with you. Why is this shit out of order? Okay, well, let's just start, right? Let's start with a little fake news. Let's get us going here with some Moscow time. Zelensky says, build the wall. Ukraine erecting 2,000 kilometers of fortification on the front lines. I think America's paying for it. Remember the old Trump line, Mexico is going to pay? No. Ukraine is building a wall and America is going to pay. It's perfect. We love it. It's so good. Build that wall. This comes from Canada. Canada considers house arrest for people at risk of committing hate crimes. At risk of committing hate crimes. We love Canada. It's just the best. Now, yesterday, you also had Robert Hur, the fella who put together the legal opinion that Biden was not competent to stand trial and couldn't take responsibilities for his own boxes hoax, right? It's related. It's the double boxes hoax. Trump has a boxes hoax. Biden's got a boxes hoax. But Hur came out and had a testimony yesterday. And I just got to read you some of the dialogue from that. So these aren't headlines, but they're apparently what congressmen use for logic. So this is pretty fun stuff. So Nadler, did Biden lie in your investigation? Hur says, we did have an instance where the facts didn't align with what he told us. Nadler, so Biden didn't lie. Would you agree that lying is considered obstruction like in Mr. Trump's case? Too good. We got more. The Associated Press writes this headline. Hur said Biden couldn't recall when his son died. The interview transcript is more complicated. It's more complicated. It's okay. I got one more one here from Nadler. So he comes out and says, President Biden had the mental acuity to navigate the situation. This is the boxes hoax. Trump did not. So what they're going with here is Trump doesn't have the mental acuity that Biden has. It's perfect. Thank you, simulation, for the double boxes hoax. Where would we be without the double boxes hoax, right? The boxes hoax on its own, too boring. But the double boxes hoax with the Corvette and the garage, and then the guy yesterday who's like, I moved the boxes. And they ran how many fake news stories on it. I moved them, but I didn't know what was in them, but I moved them. Excellent stuff. Thank you, simulation. I don't know where we'd be without this stuff. Oh, this is a personal little favorite here. I didn't know that, but I want to share it with you because I really fucking hate Neil deGrasse Tyson. Like, I can't stand that guy. He's another one of like the Trudeau type people. The minute I hear his voice, I'm irritated. Just the sound of his voice. Just the sound is enough to get me to switch the channel or get away from it. I'm on full Neil deGrasse Tyson blockage in my life. And I have been for a long time. That guy's been a moron since the very first beginning. But here's great. I didn't know this. He's got a bunch of sexual assault allegations. So I want to read you in his own words, his excuse. It's excellent, right? Now tell me if you know if you can spot the Moscow time in here. This is what he actually said, right? So he didn't have a rate button or anything like the other guy on NBC, Matt Lauer, but we'll see what he says. He says, afterwards, she came into my office and told me she was creeped out by the wine and cheese evening. She viewed the invite as an attempt to seduce her, even though she sat across the wine and cheese table from me, and all conversation had been in the same vein as all other conversations we ever had. Further, I never touched her until I shook her hand upon departure. On that occasion, I offered a special handshake, one I learned from a native elder on reservation land at the edge of the Grand Canyon. You extend your thumb forward during the handshake to feel the other person's vital spirit energy, the pulse. I've never forgotten that handshake, and I save it in appreciation of people with whom I've developed new friendships. Oh, isn't that nice? Neil deGrasse Tyson, not a rapist. Not. I'm not saying he's a rapist. Don't hear that I said that. This is a totally credible excuse. Totally believable. I love it. This one's awesome. So, you got the war in Ukraine, and a lot of people have been saying for a while that the war in Ukraine is causing more strife, right? Americans will say that the war in Ukraine is giving an excuse for Taiwan, or if we lose Ukraine, then China is going to take Taiwan and all this kind of stuff, right? What does The Economist say about all that? It's good. Following abandonment by Trump, America's Democratic Asian allies could decide they have little choice but to pursue an accommodation with autocratic China, ending 7 decades of the American-led security order in the region. So remember, according to The Economist, anything that happens in Asia is Trump's fault. It's Trump, guys. Come on. What are you talking about? It's Trump. So one of the greatest things ever in the history of fake news and Moscow time happened yesterday. In the history of the corporate media, we had our man, Saylor, go with a low IQ journal. I've never even seen this moron that he was on the show with yesterday. So I don't even know who this person was, right? And so our friend Michael Saylor goes on there, and she's trying to prod him with like, when are you going to sell? We love the when are you going to sell question, right? Who doesn't love, what Bitcoiner, what warm-blooded Bitcoiner out there doesn't love getting that question? When are you selling, right? And Saylor came up with the greatest answer. It's an evolution on the have fun staying poor meme, which we all love, right? The have fun staying poor meme was one of the best memes from the last cycle. Just excellent, right? So this is his exact words, right? So he comes in and they ask him, and she asks him, come on, when are you going to sell? And he goes, let me put it another way. He says, people who use fiat currency as a store of value, there's a name for them. We call them poor. It's so good. Now, I've been telling you for a long time that the best form of protest against this evil fiat system is actually wealth, right? Getting rich is probably the best way we can all fight World War III. I believed that for a long time. That's one of the reasons why I've been in Bitcoin, and one of the reasons why I think we are bound and destined to reshape reality at its very core and its very source, right? At the psychological level of money and the human governance systems that come out of that, and really the fact that reality does in the end extend from how we govern ourselves, and how we govern ourselves is directly tied to the form of money that we have. I said in my book, the NPC Guide, Bitcoiner's Guide to NPC Management, of course, that the root key access that you get to the subconscious by controlling money is one of the biggest levers that we've got, right? Now, I continue to think that this division between rich and poor is the strongest motivating factor for most Americans, right? Now, I've explained this many times that in previous episodes, but we keep growing here, so we got to reiterate some of these stories sometimes. Now, this is a little lesson in swearing and what it means for your subconscious of your culture and what it actually communicates. So I've said for a long time that swear words are actually a window into the fears of a culture, right? So each culture has its own fears baked into the language itself, and swear words and insults are usually a good way to determine where these fears come from, right? The fears get turned into swear words. So one of the great examples I have is France and Quebec, because they both speak French, and they have completely different swear words. So the swear words that come out of both of these countries actually talk more about their history and their culture and their fears, uh, beyond the language. So all the swear words in France are all about being an inadequate lover, right? Not being good at sex, basically. So if you spill milk in France, you say brothel prostitutes, right? Bordel putain, right? Putain de bordel. So it's a brothel. A prostitute is a pute. And so that those are the main swear words. You'll basically have to say that someone has to pay for sex, which is low quality human in that world. In Quebec, however, most of the swear words are based on the religious order that helped create Quebec as it is, right? Quebec was a real breakaway civilization. Very few people, if you guys don't know the history of Quebec and the source people that came to make Quebec, it's very few. It's only like 1,000 people that created all of Quebec today. And it was done by the actual church. The church had the strictest marriage lineage rules going. You had to go to the church. The church organized the weddings and marriages, made them, had to give blessings and permission. So, well, I'll get to the English in a second, right? I'll get to the English, and the Americans have whole nother thing. Most English swear words are about functions of the body. Fuck, shit, right? It's all basically just Victorian principles of filth and body and all of that stuff. Different from Americans, right? Which is what we're going to get into. I'm driving towards the American fears right now. How to start a fight, basically, in America with swear words. In Quebec, it's all religious words, right? So all of the words in Quebec, if you spill milk in Quebec, you'll say tabernacle, chalice, wafer, right? Those are swear words in Quebec. That's literally how Quebecers swear. Wafer, right? Hostie, the little wafer you get in the Catholic Church. That you can start a fight in Quebec with that kind of talk, right? You can. Well, they're not a big fighting culture, but theoretically, you could get a fight going with that. Korea is one of my favorites, right? I speak Korean. I can read and write Korean. I don't speak great. I got a couple hundred words vocabulary, but I lived there for a few years, and I definitely know how to swear. You want to get a fight going in Korea? You know what you call someone? A puppy. Puppy is like that. That's how you get fists being thrown. It's called geseki. And what that means is not only, so it's a Confucian thing, right? Not only are you young, you're a dog. So you're double low, right? You're a young dog. So puppy is throw it, let's get going, right? Let's fight. In America, of course, it's not, you can use the swear words from England, but they don't really have much of an effect. If you really want to get something going in America, it's loser, right? Welfare case, poor, right? It's all about not being a winner, not achieving, not being rich in the end, right? So calling someone a poor, white trash, whatever, is usually going to get some fists thrown and all that kind of stuff. And so poverty really is one of the main fear factors baked into the American consciousness. And now that we're getting to this level where we're actually able to put these concepts out into the open like this and accuse people of being poor, or admit and acknowledge that they're poor if they think this way and they have this mental model. So in that way, Saylor has hit it right on the head here. And it's one of the main reasons why I think Bitcoin is going to win, because we're going to attract more and more wealthy people. And actually building your own wealth is, as I've said, the best way to protest and fight against this tyrannical government, right? If you have that flexibility, you can start living like a lot of Bitcoiners do, right? Bitcoiners don't really bother with individual countries anymore. We've been using the sovereign individual battle plan for quite a while, right? I don't spend 6 months in any country in the year on purpose, right? I don't want to be involved in any of these people trying to get my wealth, right? I'm not interested in that. I've checked out of that system and have been on the road in a very clever way on my own for the past few years, right? So that way I don't have too much migration. I just sort of avoid the snow and the cold. But at the same time, I'm able to live, really close to I have a cheat code because of the US border that exists in Quebec and all that. Totally legit and nothing wrong with what I do. Absolutely not illegal. I'm free to be able to do that. And there's not really many rules people can institute that would stop me from being able to do that, right? I have these sort of rights to come and go. So one of the big things, of course, being wealthy in this environment allows you to have the kind of footing that you need to take a punch at these evildoers, right? So what Saylor actually did yesterday was put the fear and the actual risks of not understanding Bitcoin into perspective, right? This moves it from just being, well, you should maybe get a little, right? You should a little de-risking from the system versus the whole game, right? Now, this sort of fits really well with a conversation that sprung up yesterday, which is this guy here, Marco Jusic or Ukic, maybe Marco Ukic. Anyway, you don't need to know who this guy is. He works for some think tank, blah 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 blah. Right? Probably not rich. Probably not a rich guy. Sounds like an academic from his background. So he comes out and he says the fact that outright billionaires are choosing to spend their time being irate online commentators and podcast hosts rather than like literally anything else productive seems like a sign of one of the most important and unspoken sociological facts about modern America, he says. So he's waxing philosophic here on what billionaires should do with their time and shouldn't do, right? And he says, apparently in America, the purpose of having billions of dollars is to have job security for being a full-time podcaster or online commentator about the woke left, which it turns out has gone bananas. Billions of dollars to pursue my lifelong dream of being an influencer. So this Marco guy is boiling it all down to, oh, they just need a little ego boost because they're rich and they need, what is out there for. Yeah, choose rich. We love the choose rich guy, right? Choose rich every time, right? I find the choose rich thing coming into this conversation also like nice symmetry, so we love it. So Marco then goes and gives advice to billionaires. Imagine Marco, an academic, sitting around on social media with, no one cares who this guy is, says, my advice to billionaires, use your money to generously and wildly fund crazy people with unconventional ideas, not just their startup ideas to get a return, fund them without strings attached. Write a serious book, he says. Do not start a podcast. Do not tweet. Do not smile in photos. If only you fund business ideas, you are only ever going to get more useless money. This is a terminal dead end. So he's got all this advice. Now, remember, one of my pieces of advice to you is don't take advice from people poorer than you. It's not a good idea. What do you have to learn from them? What do you have to learn? What do you have to learn from someone who is poorer than you? Not that much. Not that much in the end, right? Now, I'm not saying be rude about poverty, right? Don't be rude about it. But why in the hell do we live in a world where academics who teach about economics are poor? Why do we have to listen to financial journalists like this fucking moron who was on with Michael Saylor yesterday with her smug face, trying to tell Michael Saylor what he ought to do with his money and basically saying, when are you going to cash out? She didn't even understand the game that was being played. So watching him punch a fake news journalist in the face like that, who just basically had the rug pulled on reality. Reality had got the rug pull on this journalist yesterday, which was perfect. Watching her face try to understand what was going on. It was excellent stuff, right? So, but that guy's comment, this think tank guy, his comment got picked up by a lot of people. So we had Balaji come out and talk about it. He says billions of dollars and millions of followers. The whole thread I'm quote tweeting is wrong, but in interesting ways. Are there good strategic reasons why you see wealthy people posting online and making investments that compound money? Reasons that go beyond mere short-sightedness. Indeed, there are. Media is as important as money, Balaji says. First, social media is important. Trump gained the presidency in part by posting. He says Bukele is extremely online and extremely good at online video. David Sachs' policy influence is due to his podcast, and Elon reaches more people than Biden. Millions of followers are valuable, just like billions of dollars are. The reason media is important is because it scales. When you go all the way up to the very top, what drives the world is money and media. Sure, money funds media, but media shapes, I had to change the page here, but media shapes how money is spent. And media scales for free while money is scarce. So putting out content is actually an extremely good strategy to shape the world in addition to investing in people and building things. The wrong way of thinking about this is, why are billionaires doing podcasts like us proles? The right way of thinking about it is, people who've accumulated large amounts of money are now also accumulating large amounts of followers. And B, an entirely new class of people now has their own global distribution channels. I too can speak. So yesterday, someone asked me at the end of the show why I got involved in the show. It's more or less that, right? In the sense that how can I participate in pushing back against the tyranny? Well, in my mind, it was getting people in a content type setting here and sharing information and commenting on the news and contrasting the fake news with what I think is more valuable news. I do it personally because I think that the corporate media model is dead. And I've already gone through some of the biggest, I helped create CoinDesk, for example, and saw the problems of corporate media already from the startup side that I had experienced. So when I was bought out of my ownership in CoinDesk in 2019, it's when I started to realize if I wanted to continue in media, I ought to try it on my own entirely, because you got to kind of future-proof yourself and you got to kind of create these models that will help you do it and innovate at the same time. So that's one of the reasons why I did it, right? Balaji goes on, because until less than 2 years ago, until Elon took to Twitter, you didn't really have the ability to broadcast unfiltered thoughts to a large audience. Until the 2010s, the limitations were technical. Only newspaper barons could get the message out. And then in the 2010s, the limitations were political. Only those allied with the newspaper barons could get the message out, lest New York Times cancel you. That's now changed. Anyone can truly broadcast to anyone. Once everyone knows what everyone else thinks, things change fast. Overton windows are shattering and performance cascades are forming. Preference cascades are forming. The world is, by some measures, 40 points to the right of where it was in 2020, an absolutely enormous shift, catalyzed almost entirely by people posting freely on here. And yes, if you're extremely online, you might take this for granted or forget how different the world is today from even a few years ago, but there's a real lesson in legacy media, why they fought so hard to retain control. Losing their centralized choke point over information is truly at the level of the fall of communism. We have digital glasnost now. Just to calibrate, less than a year ago, it took the personal intervention of the richest man in the world using $44 billion in risk capital pledged from many zillionaires, not just Elon, to let us ask a simple question: what is a woman? Again, this isn't small stuff. The level of insanity that society had gotten to was at the level of Orwell's 2 + 2 = 5. People were denying that XX equals XY. If they can lie about that, if they can convince themselves they are telling the truth even as they lie, they can lie about anything. And yes, many are still lying about it, but they have lost the high ground on Twitter, so they are losing ground. It doesn't all happen at once, though. After decades of intellectual suppression, the narrative is unwinding in roughly reverse order, with the most recent bad ideas from the 2010s getting uninstalled first, and older bad ideas slated for subsequent deconstruction. The process is messy, right? And he quotes here I can't pronounce his name, Solzhenitsyn. He's that Russian guy, right? So Balaji summarizes, he says, it's smart for wealthy people to accumulate millions of followers in addition to billions of dollars. It's good for them to broadcast obviously true statements that couldn't be said a year ago, to give others air cover to say those statements. And it's bad to take this for granted, as you also now have newfound freedom to speak. Here's the Solzhenitsyn quote that he offers. He says, the transition from free speech to enforced silence is no doubt painful. What torment for a living society, used to thinking for itself, to lose from some decreed date the right to express itself in print and in public, to bite back its words year in and year out in friendly conversation and even under the family roof. Now, I'll tell you again what one of these spies told me in China back in 2016, when Obama was still president, before Trump, and I was talking to him. I was there for Bitcoin related stuff, and the spy who was sort of sicked on all of us, right? There were spies everywhere. I outed him. I understood what he was, told him, and accused him of being a spy. And he just was like, yeah, of course. And at the time, he told me, as we were debating, he goes, look, I can say anything I want about the Communist Party in China. They don't give a fuck, right? They're listening to everything that's going on in this room. I can say these people are stupid, they're morons, no one will care. And he said, what you have in America is much more dangerous. You have self-censorship. And I would say that Obama, of all the things I disliked about him, his strong ability to self-censor was the thing I liked least, right? He was very good at self-censoring. That's why I loved Trump's nickname for him teleprompter guy, because without the teleprompter, he was very weakened. And the whole point of the teleprompter was for self-censorship in order to craft messages and do the waiting, which is why I loved the barnstorming early Trump candidate Trump in 2015, 2016, when he was just the most out of his mind that he's ever been. And it was the most outrageous and the funniest and all that stuff, right? So Solzhenitsyn goes on, he goes, but the way back, which our country will soon face, the return of breathing and consciousness, the transition from silence to free speech will also prove difficult and slow and just as painful because of the gulf of utter incomprehension which will suddenly yawn between fellow countrymen, even though those of the same generation and same place of origin, even members of the same close circle. Now, I've said this many times, right? This is what we were talking about yesterday when I was asked, why do I do the show, and the sort of loneliness factor. You got to realize that I went from, like, I'm not from a rich family at all in Canada. My mother was a waitress. My dad did, odd jobs as I was growing up. We were fine, right? A typical lower middle class, but I could go skiing whenever I wanted. I could go on, it was fine. I had a bit of cash. I worked from 12 years old on, so I was able to have a pretty normal lifestyle. But one of the benefits of growing up in Canada, where I grew up, when I grew up, in the actual village I grew up in, right? So the village I grew up in is actually very important for my background and where I come from, because the village I come from is not just wealthy. It's sort of the aristocratic seat of Canada. The prime ministers all live there. Very, very wealthy people coming through all the time. It's a gorgeous village. Like I thought, because it's so picture perfect, I believed the whole world was like that until I left my town. It's in the Eastern Townships. It's right close to Vermont, in the mountains, skiing. I went to school in a red brick schoolhouse with a clock tower in the middle, and we would walk to the Fieldstone Church at the top of the valley for Christmas, and we would all sing Christmas songs. And we had the oldest library in all of Quebec, the oldest public library in all of Quebec. My town was built as a New England town, very different from a Quebec town. A Quebec town, like all Latin towns, will put a Catholic church in the middle and build the town around, whereas an American town had to show, or a New England town had to show, no preference for an individual church. So civic buildings are in the middle, libraries, banks, stores, churches on the outside as you come into town. Different routes into town will pass by a Catholic church, an Anglican church, a United Church. And so that's how you come into these towns. So they're not the same, right? Totally built by these people. And what the advantage I had growing up in a town like that is that all these rich people were around, and it was all very accessible, right? They weren't jerks. They weren't like, oh, you're poor. It's not like that in Canada. Those are the good sides of Canada that we always have to acknowledge. Canada does really have that sort of American dream, just like America built in, where who you come from shouldn't keep you down and all that kind of stuff, where you come from. So I was very early in my life sort of taken under the wing of mentors and really rich people who gave me a private education of just seeing how these people act and interact. Now, the things I learned were, and this has been both good and bad, some of those folks who grew up with a lot of money are the best in the sense that they don't get jealous of you if you make money. They know what money is. They're not as screwed up about it. So I do have the advantage of having a lot of friends that I grew up with that didn't get any jealousy troubles because I learned about Bitcoin early and all that stuff. But I still lost a ton of friends, a ton. And these would be people you would think of as conservative, and I would have agreed with them on most things until Trump and Bitcoin and these things came around, where, just as Solzhenitsyn says, you can't be friends with these people. Like, they hate you. They hate you. They're people you grew up with who hate you. They're not happy that you made it and became successful. That's the last thing they want to. That's the last thing they want to see, right? So this was a great lesson for me, and really, truly one of the reasons why Bitcoin communities are so strong, because a lot of us have lost a lot of social energy and social life, and our ability to talk about whatever we're interested in was really censored and muted by all of these broken brains around us and these people who don't want to hear about it, right? So this was a profound experience for me, and one of the reasons why a lot of Bitcoiners do get into content and do start creating podcasts and want to talk about it and go on spaces. The Bitcoiners who have been in the game the longest, I see them online the most, right? They have more time to do it, but they're there. Doesn't matter how much Bitcoin they have. They're there pushing every single day for more people to understand just how hoodwinked they've been by the fiat system, and really thinking of it as trying to save people from, the inevitable collapse of the system that's coming. So, in that spirit, you've got, Balaji talking about why these billionaires would get involved with content and why it's important. He talks also about leading by loss leading, that if you're able to lose time and money, it shows that you're really interested in investing in the future and future returns and a future better world, because you don't mind losing now, because what we've got now is kind of garbage. So he says, to the second point, which is really three claims: the idea that left-wing billionaires don't compound their money, the idea that non-left billionaires should copy left-wing billionaires, and C, the idea that the only thing holding back civilization is lack of funding from money-losing ideas. Right? Each of these three claims is wrong, but again, in interesting ways. So he goes into the details of this. But luckily, we also had Cernovich yesterday, who talked exactly about this stuff too. So, and I don't think Cernovich got involved in this conversation about billionaires and wealthy people and funding culture because of this post by this guy and what Balaji said. I think these were just coincidences, right? So yesterday, Cernovich goes online and says the following, right? Let me find it. Let me find the Cernovich quote. He did a whole piece on it, right? So what he says is, no one will waste your time like a rich conservative man. Now, almost true. I think in a lot of ways true, but hear him out. It's important. I did get quite a bit of support in my young years from rich conservative men who I got one of the best scholarships in Canada, for example, when I went to law school because of a rich conservative man. So, it's not always like that. But anyway, here we go. He says, I learned this lesson quickly. In 2016, 2018, I was the it thing, he says. There was hype around me. There's a magical time during your come up where everyone wants a piece of you. By the time this has happened to me, I was nearly middle-aged and mostly set in my identity, hence why I don't have a lot of the psychological issues many influencers have. People wanted to meet me. Okay, sure, I'm polite. I'm a polite guy. I was always a one-man band, self-published my own works and crowd-funded films while living a modest lifestyle. The benefit of this is you don't have too many chefs in the kitchen. The downside is I would have made 5 hoax-level films by now if right-wing people weren't lame. Men would ask me to meet, then they'd show up and try to play some power differential games, and I'd walk out, right? Now, I never really got involved with I quit conservative politics after the Stephen Harper years in Canada to go into Bitcoin, because I sort of understood that there was not a financing problem, but indeed they weren't at the same level of understanding. They wanted to get into these pet projects and things like that, and I saw it all as a waste of time, right? We had the chance under our government, the majority government that the Stephen Harper government formed in 2011 to 2015, to destroy the CBC, for example, to completely defund it. That was all I was interested in, and it didn't happen. So ridiculous, right? There were enough to quit right then and there. So what he's saying here is that the conservative culture has not invested in culture, in the sense that they haven't invested in the films, they haven't invested in creating all of this propaganda in the same way that left-wing people are. So both Balaji and Cernovich were talking about this difference, right? But here's where Bitcoin makes things different again, right? That's why I reject the conservative financing models, their content, and all that kind of stuff, and why Bitcoin is the natural heir from a content point of view to almost all of this sort of right-wing influencer stuff, and why we're seeing this recalibration, not between red and blue, but with credibility injected, we're seeing everything turn from green to orange. We're seeing exactly what Balaji has predicted for a long time, the recalibration of politics from woke to Bitcoin, not left and right, right? So it looks like this thing is happening at scale now. And in many ways, you had yesterday Elon saying exactly this. Elon retweeted this today, right? It was from Rise. These scam coins are getting crazy. Someone just shilled me. So this is what Elon Musk retweeted. This is someone else's tweet. $27 trillion in circulation, unlimited supply cap, only one node, 25% of supply minted in last 6 months. 1% of holders own 30%. And he goes, joking, that's just the US dollar. It's perfect. And indeed, Bitcoiners are mimetically spreading this message around that the actual fight is between fiat and dollars. And now that we're starting to see that the actual fight between fiat and, Bitcoin is the actual schism in the world, that's why Saylor's insult about being poor is so effective. He's actually getting into the deepest parts of American subconscious and provoking people in a subconscious way that is not possible with over-the-air communications and arguments. You know, when I wrote the book, The Bitcoiner's Guide to NPC Management, and my upcoming book, I should release it by our 500th episode next week, which is going to be called The Bitcoiner's Guide to the US 2024 Elections, really is about this idea of how we persuade people at a deep subconscious level in order to break the binds that keep people hypnotized in the fiat system. And so when you start seeing more of this stuff and you start seeing more Bitcoiners finance culture, where I think things are headed next, right? Unlike conservative men, Bitcoiners are going to understand we need to finance culture. We need to get involved in these conversations. That's why I write the science fiction books. That's why I try to publish stuff in Bitcoin. That's why we do the show too. The show is sort of combined in my distribution model to try and get this type of writing out. You know, if there is something I'm trying to sell you guys, eventually it's some books, right? So there is a bit of sales on my part, but I'm not trying to get rich off the books or anything like that. I'm trying to just have a bit of, you know, see that people actually like it and want to pay for it and have that kind of thing going. But not only did Balaji and Cernovich both make comments about this wealth and content piece, probably the best, for me anyway, the earliest person into most of the most profound Bitcoin philosophical insights that I've ever come across is Stein. That's part of the Nakamoto Institute Foundation with Pierre Rochard. He was the person who probably most humbled myself, because when I got in Bitcoin in 2013 and 2014, like many Bitcoiners, I thought I was the first one to have this idea and that idea. But then I found this young university student who would beat me to everything, right? So it was one of the better humbling things that can happen to early Bitcoiners. But here he is talking about this actual thing, right? And he says, the problem with the billionaire putting their money toward any cause or project before putting it all into Bitcoin is that until you are using Bitcoin as your unit of account, you will not be able to properly price those other causes or projects, which is why I'm doing my whole project for books and publishing in Bitcoin first, right? And nothing else after. But that's why Bitcoin and building around Bitcoin, to me anyway, is really important. The billionaire would overinvest in other causes at the following cost: loss of Bitcoin holdings, which means less being done for arguably the most important cause of our present age, effectively defunding parasitical institutions that rely on money printers to exist. So this is him saying that the propaganda arm that is necessary in fiat, the words that help the money based on words propagate, is the fake news, right? It's a theme of this breakup gang that we've been talking about all the time, that the actual node propagation is the brainwashing. Otherwise, the thing doesn't make sense, right? It is that the money is government decrees. If government decrees aren't propagandized by the media complex, the network does not perpetuate forward. So what fault tolerance does it have? How can it continue forward, right? I say the fault tolerance is very, very, very low in the case of fiat, right? Just a few nodes breaking down from the message, like Balaji has noticed here, right? Just the billionaires getting involved is enough. It's enough to break it. He goes on, less Bitcoin holdings, which almost certainly means less future wealth. 3, less future wealth, which means less capacity to address even more of the causes in the future. Bitcoin is the answer, whether your goals are economic, political, or humanitarian, selfish or selfless. Only with Bitcoin can you or anyone direct their time, energy, and resources peacefully and effectively toward producing more good for yourself and for the world. So he's entirely right. And it's exactly what Cernovich was, you know, he's right to warn you against the conservative men, of course, right? That indeed they don't fund culture the same way. The way he wrote about this is exactly this, right? Right-wing conservative rich men do not care about God or culture. They worship money, but the wrong money, the wrong money, right? And so he goes on here and says that uh, um, they don't understand the same relationship the way a lot of the left-wing people do, right? Funding culture is primarily how the fiat system has been able to propagate this far. But now that we're seeing this breakup with these wealthy people and with, someone like Cernovich taking aim at the cultural financing that goes on, these things are what we need to tear down the old fake blue and red, Republican and Democrat, fake dichotomies and fake divisions which exist in America. So that's why it's so important, right? And that's why, even what Balaji said, speech being money and them being related, that's the reason why you're getting into all this trouble. The Tornado Cash thing happened yesterday, where the fella who did the mixing stuff, the money laundering, the Bitcoin fog thing, was, of course, in Washington, D.C., right? Guilty on all 4 accounts. And according to CoinDesk, the U.S. law enforcement is saying it's a win, right? The verdict is a win for those people. So you get that instance. You get the case also of these Binance folks. Did you hear about this? These Binance folks were invited to Nigeria, but then they've been detained. So they were invited and then detained because these places are getting it, right? The courts in Washington, D.C., corrupt Nigeria is starting to understand that the divisions are between Bitcoin and government issued money and how we organize ourselves and how we govern ourselves. So the distinction here being, I'm just getting that down, being a really important one. And it's why why the capacity of Bitcoiners moving forward to spend money on culture, to do content and things like that is so important, right? And indeed, having these people out there speaking publicly about this stuff and speaking openly now, like Elon did, making fun of the US dollar, understanding that poverty, real poverty, and the real risks and the fear that should flow from the risk of being poor by attaching your wagon to this crashing system is going to be one of the biggest motivating factors. And it completely goes over the top of any amount of just word thinking that people try to inject into your mind using the broken fake news. So it looks like things are going great, guys. It looks like things are going great. And it looks like our capacity to get out of this trouble is better than ever. And that's why, when you even take a look at this TikTok bill that's it now, who hates TikTok? I hate TikTok. I'm never going to use TikTok. But it looks like the bill that's been proposed, the one that Trump is against and the one that a few folks are against, looks like the point of it is actually to stop billionaires like Elon Musk from having this kind of capacity to attack state propaganda. Thomas Massey believes it's that. He goes, the so-called TikTok ban is a Trojan horse. The president will be given the power to ban websites, not just apps. The person breaking the new law is deemed to be the U.S. Internet Hosting Service or App Store, not the foreign adversary. Elon says this law is not just about TikTok, it's about government censorship and control. If it were just about TikTok, it would only cite foreign control as the issue, but it does not. So it looks like the point of this thing is to actually try to take on the billionaires from the podcasts and all that kind of stuff, which means we're directly over the target now. And it means that when Saylor says things like, we call them poor, the amount of damage we're actually inflicting on the system is far greater. That journalist in her stupid face when she's like, I don't understand what you're talking about, and you can see the cognitive dissonance there. That whole thing actually spreads like a virus mimetically. And that's why things are recalibrating and changing so fast, and why we're on the cusp of golden age, everyone. Why we're on the cusp of the golden age. The fourth halving is the fourth turning. There you go. We love it. We love it. Winning hearts and minds is 95% of the battle, and the most effective direct action is influencing the subconscious, teaching children, and reaching the inner child of adults. Yeah. And again, the part about poverty is really important, right? No one wants to be poor, especially in America. We're absolutely baked in. The grocery store lady used her special marker on our $20 bill the other day. Hub says, that's fake, right? Oh, the look we got. Used her special mark. Yeah, on our $20 bill the other day. Yeah, that's fake, right? Yeah. Whenever I hear a celebrity or athlete getting a massive fiat contract, I can't help but think to myself, that's great. But how much BTC do they have? What good is a contract in a useless currency? Yeah, I thought exactly that about Brandon, about the what's his name, Otani contract. What's he thinking? How does anyone think that's smart? Now, I get why you'd want to de-risk from the American taxation system, but still, I mean, deferring your US shitcoin salary for 30 years or something. Now, I get he makes way more money than most ball players because of all the contracts he gets back in Japan, and that's great for him. So I'm not worried about yeah, I played the song. I played the song before the show, so I'm not worried about Otani. But indeed, yeah, there you go. Yeah, I played it live fork at the beginning of today's episode. Fiat is truly dying. The societal decay everywhere is manifested through Moscow time you share each day. Isn't it fun? Yeah. Bitcoin is a successful application of decentralized systems theory. We should strive to achieve this level of durability in other key aspects of society. I actually measure World War III. I mean, that's like the tagline on this show describing it on YouTube is we're measuring World War III in terms of decentralization measured in Bitcoin. That's let no one forget that your health is your only wealth. Indeed. Yeah, we call them poor. We call them poor. All right, let me see what people are saying over on Rumble because I missed the Rumble one. I missed Rumble. We love the Rumble, folks. Oh, here's what I had one more note here on what Scott Adams said about Rumble and Bitcoin. It was pretty good. I wanted to share it. Where did I put that? Where is it? Well, and that's also why, the France thing, we'll talk about France in a minute, but why the fake news is so incapable now of persuading people that you get both the princess or the princess in England, that whole story, no one's buying it. And then Candace Owens did her thing yesterday on the France situation. Now, the Candace Owens made a pretty strong case. She's put her whole reputation on the line to say that the wife of the president is a trans. Now, I don't know if that's true. Everything she said was very convincing. If you listen to Candace Owens and watch the 15 minutes that she did on her show 2 days ago about it, you'll walk away saying that's a man. Now, I didn't do any of my own research, so I bet you it wouldn't take me long to find some of the stuff that she said debunked. But that's not why I'm talking about it. I'm talking about the ability of the news to persuade people on this, and it's zero. It's not working. The rumors are way faster now than the ability of the news to clean up the mess. And the way the news cleans up the mess is even more suspect. So I don't know what's going to happen with this thing. She's saying, Candace says, I would stake my entire professional reputation on the fact that Brigitte Macron is in fact a man. Any journalist or publication that is trying to dismiss this plausibility is immediately identifiable as establishment. We'll see. It would be hilarious if this turns out to be true. I mean, it would be one of the biggest recalibration events we would see, right? This would really show you where the risks of poverty and mental illness are actually sourced from, right? imagine the gaslighting type of stuff that would come from this. So there you go. Maybe I didn't save the Scott Adams thing. He was comparing Bitcoin and Rumble. It was a good observation, but that's fine. I don't have the notes there. All right, let me go back to the Rumble thing and get your comments. See what folks are saying over on Rumble this morning. Remember, I only read the Rumble comments from the Count BTC Rumble. We do 2 Rumble channels. We do the Bitcoin Magazine one, and we do this one too. Good morning. Let's break it up. Tom says, Connector. Bonjour, la breakup gang. Indeed. Bonjour. Whoa. Don't want the noise. Good morning, all. Tyson is such an idiot, Sluggo says. Oh, I can't stand him. We call them poor, wonderfully arrogant. We love the arrogance. Isn't the arrogance one of the best parts of it? We love it. Points of view. Sailor's Poor Common is already a song thanks to Little Bubble. Yeah, we played the song at the start of the show. We love it. We love it. The Nostra purists hail the man without the backbone, Jack Dorsey, and hate on the true hero, Musk. Pathetic. Well, Sluggo, I mean, we all got to take our time with who's a hero and who's a failure and all that stuff. Again, I think Jack Dorsey, like a typical CEO, was the last person to know. Musk came at it from a different point of view, and so there you go. But I don't like that somehow that Musk is so suspect on Nostra. It doesn't make any sense. We love them both, right? Great talk. Thanks, Political Trope says. Muslim Bitcoiner, Assalamu alaikum, day 3 of fasting and stacking sats. By the way, CPI came in hot. If Fed doesn't cut rates by election, shit hits the fan. Yeah, there's rumors they're going to push it off again. They're definitely going to be cutting rates. There's no way. They got to keep this thing going in the only way they know how, right? The only way they know how. The fourth halving is the fourth turning, indeed. All right, team. That's all I got for today. That's all I got. I hope everyone's having a great day. I hope everyone realizes that to win, we got to call them poor. Let me see if the Bitcoin Magazine channel has a few comments I can get to. Did I miss any stories? Is there anything out there people are very curious about that I might have seen? We got another big audience over on Rumble. We love it. We love it. Good morning, Bitcoiners. I watched the hearing. It was TDS extreme as the Dems made it all about Trump. Yeah. Elephant farts. Never going to give you up. Never going to let you down. We love it. Oh, not again. This. Good morning. Did you happen to hear that Rumble is interested in buying TikTok? Yeah, I think that was more of a publicity stunt from Chris, the owner, which is great. You know, I don't think they can afford it. I don't know. Maybe. I feel like TikTok is worth a lot of money because of the user base. So, but yeah, I mean, I saw he made the offer. It would be great if he can pull the money together. If he can get someone to do it, it would make a lot of sense. Again, I'm very anti TikTok. Whoever owns it, actually, I don't like the distribution system. I don't like the hot button and all that stuff. But that's just me. I think as we move forward on a Bitcoin standard, our attention span ought to increase. So that ought to be what we get away from. But I could be wrong about that. I don't have strong convictions. It might just be wishful thinking, you know. All right, team. That's all I got for today. I hope you all have a great day. Let me get my coffee. One last sip with y'all, and I'll see you tomorrow.